everyone, Carol from Segovia Quilts here. In today's video, we're going to be working with a beautiful fabric line called Springs in Town. It's by Sandy Gervais for Riley Blake Designs. I've been waiting for this fabric to arrive here in the quilt studio, and it just got delivered. So let's go ahead and check it out. Okay, so here's the fabric. This is probably for my binding, just based on kind of how thick it is. And I'll put the name of each fabric print on the video here so you can see what it is, because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I know this is probably for my binding. And this is going to be for my background fabric. The pattern that we are doing today, I chose white as my background fabric, so that's what that is. Ooh, and these are the beautiful prints. So now again, this is the Springs in Town fabric collection, and these are not all of the prints that come in this particular collection. This is just what I chose for the pattern that I'm going to be doing today. But I really like them. I'm not normally a floral person, but when I saw these fabrics, I just thought they were super cute, and the name is perfect, Springs in Town. I mean, I know it's probably cold where you're at, it's cold where I'm at. So this is the perfect fabric, I think, to do like a spring type of quilt when it's cold outside. So these are super cute. I went with two blues because blue is my favorite color. So I went with two blues, and then I added in some pinks. I'm not normally like a girly girl, so I tend to shy away from pinks. But again, these prints were super cute, so I went ahead and I got them, and I'm so glad that I did. And yeah, these look great together. I mean, obviously they're from the same fabric collection, so they really go perfectly together. The colors are perfect. Okay, so those are those, and then this is going to be my backing fabric. So this one, again, I'll have to put the name up on the screen, but it's got like, it looks textured, but it's not. I mean, obviously it's just a regular cotton fabric, but it has kind of like this grass grain, and I think that might actually be what it's called, grass grain look to it. So yeah, I really like that, and I think that'll be super cute on the back of the quilt, and then it goes really nicely, I think, with the binding fabric, and then obviously all of the colors mesh very well together. So let me go ahead and show you the pattern that we're going to be using to make our quilt today. All right, so the pattern we're going to be using for this quilt is called Aftershock, and it's by Wren Collective. It's a really cute pattern. It does have a beginner skill level, so if you don't have a whole lot of experience, you can still knock out this particular pattern, no problem. What I also really like about this pattern is it is fat quarter friendly, so you can use fat quarters or you can use yardage, whichever one you prefer. What I also like about this pattern is in the back, it does have a color your own colors option. So now in the actual hard copy pattern, the size layout back here is the throw size, but they do have the option where you can download all of the sizes from their website. So it's just wrencollective.com, and then you can go and select the pattern, and then you can download whatever size you're going to do, and then you can color it in yourself. For today's tutorial, I won't be disclosing the sizes of blocks that I'm cutting, but I will be showing you how to put them together. So if you want to know the sizes, you'll have to go and purchase the pattern. Alright, so I've cut out all of my colored pieces. So I did use yardage for this pattern, and I got 1/4 of a yard for each fabric. And this is what I have left over from each of the fabrics. So from probably about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch after the selvage, I have about 10 inches of fabric left from each fabric. So you can still do this with yardage or a fat quarter and still have fabric left over where you can make like a cute pillow or something to go along with the quilt top. So now that all of the colors are cut out, all that's left is I need to cut out the white sections, which is the background fabric. All right, so we have all of our pieces cut out. We have all of our colored pieces and all of our background pieces. One thing to keep in mind with these fabrics, if you are doing printed fabrics instead of solid color fabrics, is if your fabric is directional, and what that means is if your fabric has, let's say, trees on it, and all of the trees are going in one direction, you want to keep that in mind because some of these blocks do get kind of turned around when you're piecing everything together, and you wouldn't want your trees to be upside down. So if your fabric is directional, keep that in mind when you are doing your cuts. It might also affect if you need additional fabric in order to keep that directional pattern. None of our fabrics are directional today, so we don't have to worry about that. Also, something to keep in mind with this pattern is everything is pieced using a scant 1/4 inch. So that means you're going to be slightly smaller than an actual 1/4 inch. It's just a little bit tinier. So just a tip when it comes to cutting out your fabric, make sure you are paying attention to what you're cutting out. So there are separate cutting instructions for the multicolor, which would look like this, and then there are separate cutting instructions for the 2-color, which would look like this. So just make sure you're being mindful of what you're cutting out before you start cutting. Okay, so the first steps for assembling the multicolor quilt, which is what we are doing, you're going to want to take out your C2 blocks, which these are the color prints, and your B1 and B2 blocks. So these are the background colors. So I've separated those here. So what I like to do when I'm doing quilts is I like to chain piece where I can. So what you're going to do is you're going to take one of your C2 blocks and one of your B1 blocks, and you're going to sew them right sides together, and you're going to want to do that for all of your C2 blocks. And then again, I like to chain piece, so I'm going to sew all of my C2 and my B1 blocks together, and you do want to have it on the right side. Again, for our fabric, it doesn't matter if I sewed one onto the left side like this, no big deal, I can just flip it around. But if your fabric is directional, be mindful of which side you're going to be sewing your background onto your colored blocks. So I'm going to chain piece all of these, and then once that's done, I'm going to press my seams, and then I'm going to chain piece my B2 blocks. You're going to do one on the top and one on the bottom. And then you can press those seams however you prefer. I will most likely press my seams to the colored block just because I am using a white background fabric, and you might potentially see like this, you might potentially see my seams through the white fabric, so I will most likely press all of my seams into my colored fabric. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. All right, so all of our B1 and C2 blocks are sewn together, and I have pressed my seams towards the color fabric. So now we can go ahead and sew all of our B2 blocks, one to the top and one to the bottom. All right, so all of my B2 pieces have been sewn to the top and bottom of this section. And again, if your fabric is directional, be mindful of which side you're going to be sewing your pieces on so that your pattern is facing the right direction. All right, so the next pieces that you're going to be sewing together are going to be your C3 blocks. So these are your colored blocks, and your B3 blocks. This is going to be your background fabric. So you're going to take one C3 and two B3s, and you're going to sew them to the right and left sides of your C3. And then once you get those sewn together, then you're going to press your seams to one side. Again, I will be pressing mine towards the center. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we have all of our C3 pieces and all of our B3 pieces sewn together. I have pressed all of my seams inside so that you won't see them on the white fabric here. So now that that is done, the next step is you're going to want to get your B4 fabric pieces, and you're going to sew one strip to the top and the bottom of this piece here. So you'll have the top and the bottom, you'll sew them together, and then again I will be pressing my seams into the colored block in the middle, and that will use up all of your B4 fabric strips, which is your background fabric. So let's go ahead and get these sewn together. All right, so we have sewn all of our B4 pieces to our middle section here, and I have pressed all of my seams into the middle. This way you don't so much see them on the outside. So this whole stack is done, so now we're ready to move on to the next step. All right, so the next stacks that you're going to be working with is going to be C5, this is your colored fabric, B5 background fabric, and C4 colored fabric. So you're going to take one C5 and one B5 and one C4, and you're going to sew these together. So you'll do your B5, you'll sew this here, and then you will do your C4 and sew this here. So again, I'm going to chain piece these off. Let's go ahead and sew these together. All right, so we have all of our C5, B5, and C4 blocks sewn together. I did press all of my seams away from the white block in the middle, so my seams are going out towards my colored fabrics. So for the next step, you're going to want to grab your B6 blocks. Now this is your background fabric, and we're going to take one strip and sew it onto the bottom, and one strip and sew it onto the top. Once those are both sewn on, you'll go ahead and press your seams. Again, I will be pressing mine towards the color fabric, so both of my seams will be going in. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so I've sewn all of my B6 pieces onto the top and bottom of my center section. I did press all of my seams in towards the colors. So now this stack is completed and we're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, so now the next step is actually putting the rows together, and because they are staggered, now is where you need to figure out the order that you want your fabrics to go. So we are going to do that by using our C1 block, and this is the order that I want my fabrics to go. So now in the picture of the quilt, they have the same color, two colors or two rows of the same color. So I didn't really want to do that because I'm using a printed fabric instead of solid colors. I kind of wanted to separate it. And I think my blues to be kind of the focal point in the center of the quilt. So I've got both of my blue fabrics here. I've got my flowers is going to be in the middle of the quilt, followed by this geometric pattern, and then I've got my greens because it's right next to the blue and there's blues in that print. And then I've got my larger print flower fabric because it does have green in it, so I thought that would go good with that fabric. And then followed by, it's still a pink fabric, but it's much smaller kind of floral arrangements here, but because they're both the pink, I thought it would look good together. And then next, I've got kind of my orange peachy fabric with the little flowers on it. Again, I thought the pink flowers would go nicely with this pink fabric, so I've got that one. And then the very last one is going to be kind of like my pewter fabric, and this one has little pops of orange or peach, which goes with this one, and I thought that would look really good on the top and bottom of the quilt to kind of push your eyes into the center of the quilt. So this is the order that I'm going to have my fabrics, and then now you actually just start sewing each of the rows together. So we're going to go ahead and start with our first row. So let me get all of those pieces together. Okay, so here is the layout for half of my first row. So the center is going to be your C1 block, and then to the left of that, you're going to have your C2 block, which has the background color on the right edge as well as the top and bottom edge. Next is going to be your C3 block segment, which has the background color on both the left and the right, and the top and the bottom. Next is going to be your C5 and C4 segment. So this has a background color in between as well as the top and bottom. Now this one you need to pay particular attention to, because if you accidentally get it twisted around, it won't flow as well, just because this one is smaller than this one. I mean, probably nobody would notice but us, because, you know, we're quilters and we notice those things. But when you're laying it out, make sure you have the shorter section, your C5, to the left side and your C4 to the right side. And then after this section is going to be your B7 background color. So this is the right side of my top row. After or next to the C1 block, you're going to have the same blocks, just on the other side and in the opposite order. And then your last ending block, which for the top row is still going to be a B7 block. That will change every other row. All right, so I went ahead and laid out the right side of my top row. So this is the order that we need to sew all of these blocks in. Once all the blocks are sewn together, press your seams. Now you will have seams matching up to all of the rows as you go. So you will need to alternate. If you press your seams to the side, you're gonna wanna press, let's say row 1, all the seams are going to the left, and then row 2, all the seams go to the right, and then alternate the entire way down your quilt. Or you can press your seams open, and then you don't have to worry about which direction this row or that row needs to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these all sewn together. quilt top is done, and I think it is so super cute. These fabrics, I think, were the perfect choice for this quilt. And honestly, right now with it being cold, it really makes me think of spring, and all of these colors make me completely forget about how cold it is outside. So this is the throw size, and this is the multicolor version as opposed to the 2-color version where you would have the background color and then everything else would be one other color instead of the different color printed fabrics that I have here. So this is the throw size, and it measures 66 by 70. You can do this same top in a baby size or a bed size. You can use fat quarters or yardage to make the top. If you use fat quarters or yardage, you'll need 7. So 7 fat quarters or 7 quarter yard cuts to do the multicolor option. If you do the baby size, you would need 5 fat quarters or 5 1/4 yard cuts, and to do the bed size, you would need 10 fat quarters or 10 1/4 yard cuts of fabric. The Aftershock quilt pattern is a beginner level pattern, so if you don't have a lot of experience, that's totally fine. You can easily do this pattern. It's just straight seams. You don't have curved seams, you don't have Y seams, you don't have partial seams. It's just straight seams and go. Very, very easy for any level of quilter. The fabric collection that I used for this quilt top is called Springs in Town. It's by Sandy Gervais for Riley Blake Designs. I want to give a big shout out to Riley Blake Designs for sending me this beautiful fabric. I loved working with it. It's very soft, and the prints are so cute. The Springs in Town fabric collection will be hitting quilt shops near you in January of 2024. And if you don't have a quilt shop near you, or if you just want to be notified as soon as this fabric is available, I do have a link in the description down below to head over to the Fat Quarter Shop, where you can go ahead and get signed up on a waiting list or a notification list for when this fabric is available, and they'll send you an email as soon as it's available. Don't forget to pick up your copy of the Aftershock quilt pattern, which is available on our website. I have the link in the description down below. If you liked today's video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel yet, please make sure you do so by hitting the subscribe button, and you're not gonna wanna miss that, because up next we're going to be quilting this super cute quilt top. Let's see what kind of quilt pattern we select for it. Thanks for watching today's tutorial on how to make the Aftershock quilt pattern. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I will see you all later.